Prime Minister Salih Hudayar, an Uyghur American who escaped severe oppression and discrimination in China, is in contact with the Hong Kong protesters, and as Prime Minister of East Turkistan Government in exile, has an understanding like nobody else of China. We'll discuss slave labor in China and how crimes against humanity must be stopped. It's an incredible story that you tell about what's going on. China also happens to be one of the most discriminatory countries in the world. They discriminate against anybody who isn't Chinese, don't they?
Of course.
Yeah. And I've got that from not only from you, but from a friend of mine who's in Hong Kong. She happens to be Canadian, and she had a lot to say and a lot to talk about with that. Now, transforming the residents en masse, and they're sending them to Shandong province, factories, but it's not just factories, they're slave labor. They're paying Chinese high salaries, free land, housing, insurance to migrate to East Turkistan. Now, East Turkistan has been controlled by the Turkic people for 6,000 years. And now they've got 3 million in concentration camps, 80,000 moved to East China to manufacture Skechers shoes and that type of thing. It is absolute slave labor, and we're buying products made as a result of slave labor, aren't they, in this country?
Over 83 popular Western, including American brands and Chinese brands, companies were complicit in the slave labor of Uyghur and other Turkic peoples.
Wow. Incredible. And what they're doing is moving people from East China into your lands, and they're doing it so that they can take over and have the majority vote and the majority population over there. They're just moving your people out into slavery, and they're moving them in. And you've got a history of over 6,000 years there, don't you?
Absolutely. The Uyghur and other Turkic people of East Turkestan have been inhabiting East Turkestan for over 6,000 years.
Wow. Making that one of the oldest continuing occupied areas of any nationality in the world. It's not just there, it's the entire world. The same peoples have been there for 6,000 years, and they're disrupting all of that right now. For what? For what reason? What reason do they want to make your people into slaves? Because they just want the power, isn't it?
It's because they want the power. They want complete control of East Turkestan. East Turkestan is roughly about 1/5 of the current Chinese empire known as the People's Republic of China. It's rich in natural and mineral resources. Actually, just recently, this past week, they discovered over 100 million tons of oil in East Turkestan.
And they got gold, they've got uranium, all of that, and they want it. So they're going to they feel like you can't fight them, you're going to have to join them. And what they're doing is they have had the Barron Massacre happen in 1990, and they forced mass abortions, and they stormed with an army of over 4,000 troops. You didn't have an army. You were just peaceful.
Our army was abolished when the East Turkestan Republic was invaded and occupied by China and, renamed as the Xinjiang region of China.
Now, that was 1949, wasn't it, when your republic was abolished?
Yes.
So that's a long time ago. And they abolished it. They just abolished it. You only had 3 goals. Number 1, you wanted independence. Now, that's something that most people in the world want, is independence and freedom. Number 2, you were fighting for women's rights. China doesn't have women's rights. You were fighting for that, weren't you?
In 1918, in East Turkestan, we had the first women's rights movement in East Turkestan. This is long before women's rights was popular around the rest of the world either.
Right.
So women are key to, ensuring the survival of a nation. And that's another thing that China is targeting, is they're forcing Uyghur and other Turkic women to marry Han Chinese men in a way to eradicate the future of our existence.
In other words, diffuse the population, have them marrying outside into another race, and then your race is wiped out.
Exactly.
And then the third thing is to end the genocide and you make no bones about it, you call it what it is, end concentration camps. And that's what it is. These are concentration camps. They're not just slave labor where people could go home and live somewhere, but they are concentration camps where they're controlling their whole lives, everything, who they marry, who they see, what they do. Every aspect of their life is under control, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, in these concentration camps, I mean, nobody can get married to one another. That's a different issue. But people are being forced to denounce their ethnic, religious identity. They're being forced to engage in, politically indoctrination. Women and men are both being raped in these concentration camps. There's forced sterilization. Many prisoners in these camps are being evaluated, and their organs are being harvested to be sold in the organ harvesting in the organ market.
This is nothing like even slavery in the United States, which wasn't good, but this is even worse, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, I call it the 21st century Holocaust.
Exactly. It's 21st century, the same thing the Nazis did, except this is on a larger, if anything, as large, if not larger scale. Now, we are allowing this to happen in the 21st century. Did we not learn a lesson in the 20th century and the world wake up? They woke up then, but it's like the world's afraid of China because of their manufacturing, because of their goods, because of their control.
Unfortunately, without the support of the international community, there's the things that we can do is very limited. I mean, forget about resisting in an armed fashion. We can't even protest. Right now in East Turkestan, according to some analysts, 1/3 of the Chinese in East Turkestan work for the security forces. That's about 3 million people. And the Chinese paramilitary force in East Turkestan, the Bingtuan, is a 3 million person force. So you have several millions of Chinese security personnel stationed in East Turkestan.
You can't trust anybody who's in East Turkestan who's Chinese because they are basically spies for the Chinese. They aren't working for your people at all. So we'll be right back after a couple of words here, but this is something that you need to pay attention to. The website on this is nationalawakening.org. .org, not .com. This is an extraordinary interview to have with you, Salih Hudayar. Prime Minister. Now, the survivors who come out of these camps, they talk about brainwashing. In other words, they're telling people what to think, what to do. They've got to come out with the party line, don't they? There's no independent thought for these people.
Absolutely. I mean, in these camps, as I mentioned earlier, they're being forced to undergo political indoctrination, renouncing their ethnic, religious identity. Literally, the only God that there is for them is the Chinese Communist Party. And they have to swear loyalty to the Chinese state. They have to learn the Chinese language and see themselves as Chinese and not Uyghur or Turkic.
This is what's so bad about what's happened here, where they shut the churches down on Passover and on Christmas, and they shut the mosque down. This is all the same type of thing. This is the Chinese plan. They've got to get rid of religion because religion and God has no place with the godless communists.
Absolutely. I mean, as you were mentioning, even in East Turkestan, all religious facilities have been either destroyed or shut down. In fact, many of these religious facilities, like the mosques, the Chinese government has turned it into nightclubs and bars, or even, pens for animal, for livestock.
Oh, my God. To turn a church, a mosque, or a synagogue into that is absolutely, that's the worst thing you can do to any person who believes in God. It's the worst thing you can do to the place of worship is to totally desecrate it. That's what they're doing. They're desecrating their religion. They're desecrating their beliefs. You can't believe any of that anymore, but the people are still believing, aren't they?
I mean, inside, deep in their hearts,
right,
we feel that they're able they're still believing in God.
They don't dare say anything, but I know that there's a spirit that all peoples of the world, I won't say all, but most of the peoples of the world believe that there's a higher power. And they cannot take that away from people. You can't beat it out of them. You can't torture it out of them because we know that there is.
Exactly.
But they try on their brainwashing. Now, this is accompanied by beatings. It's accompanied by torture. It's accompanied by rape. It's accompanied by involuntary taking of medication. They're doping people too, aren't they?
Yes, many of these medications, it makes people, lose, like memory. Some of them have lost complete memory of who they are, who their family members are. Some of them, the medication is sterilization medication that they've been taking.
Yeah, and that also goes along with the forced abortion, the sterilization, and harvesting of organs. And if that doesn't work, if that isn't enough, executions, right?
Exactly. Thousands of people, in East Turkestan were executed on an annual basis. However, since they built these concentration camps, we don't know how many people have actually died. We know that they have armed crematorias that were in the area of these concentration camps. So we feel that they're actually executing people or torturing them to death and cremating their bodies to hide evidence.
They did that even in Wuhan, where they had, they knew from the type of minerals and things that was in the atmosphere, they were cremating people at the dead of night and not telling anybody about it. So they're good about that. They're good at covering up. And he said they stopped 3.7 million births in the last 30 years. Now, that also is something when you're looking at what they're doing with the abortion in this country. It's playing right along with what the Chinese program is, the abortion situation. Life is precious. They don't realize it in China. It isn't precious to them. When you multiply it times the millions of people, of your people, then you've got a situation. That is just from one person in Hong Kong. They've got to be careful because the people in Hong Kong and the people in East Turkistan, they are going to rise up against the Chinese someday. I believe that. You believe that.
Absolutely. I mean, we've consistently, for the past 70 years, have rebelled numerous times against the Chinese occupation. However, at every time, it's just we don't have enough international support to really fend off,
you can't do it. You can't do it yourself. You've got to have the weapons. You've got to have the support of others. And China has to know that there's consequences for what they're doing. They're not being told that. And it isn't that the current administration so bad. It goes back during all the administrations, doesn't it?
Exactly. I mean, the current administration, the Trump administration, has been actually doing a lot of great things. They're pushing back. But it's still not enough.
When we return, I want to know what can be done. Now, how do you know all this is occurring? I can tell you how you know it. You've seen over 100 different videos of it, haven't you?
Exactly. I continue to receive more and more videos every day showing the situation in East Turkestan right now.
Doesn't that make you just absolutely sick at your heart to know and see people that you know being tortured in this way? It's got to be a horrific thing for you.
It is, and again, I'm trying to gain some, support from the international community, from the United States, from Americans, because really we can't do this without the support of the international community, especially the United States. Given the current colonization and genocide there.
We're talking with Prime Minister Salih Hudayar of East Turkestan. And Mr. Prime Minister, I've got to ask you a question. They're not only doing this to your people, but they're doing it to anybody who isn't ethnically Chinese, aren't they?
Exactly. Right now, the past few weeks, we've been receiving a lot of reports that the African American community in Guangzhou, I mean, they're being harassed, they're being arrested in the thousands and being deported from China. And you talk China accuses the United States and the West of being racist, when in China itself is the most racist country.
Now, when you're looking at the situation going on with the coronavirus, and they're accusing China of keeping it quiet, the doctors were quieted down from exposing this. They had doctors who were killed. What they're doing, we can't trust them. We can't really believe them, can we?
No, I mean, we can't believe the Chinese government for whatever it says, because they lied about the whole coronavirus. I mean,
right.
They failed to warn the international community. In fact, they are purely responsible for the spread of the coronavirus to the rest of the world.
Well, as a matter of fact, they were flying planes to the rest of the world, but not to Beijing or Shanghai. That didn't go through the rest of the country. Isn't that a very strange situation, huh?
It's exactly. That's some questions that, the mainstream media hasn't really been asking. I think that's exactly you pointed out very well. Another thing is, they forced their neighboring countries like Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan to keep their borders open, saying that, if you don't keep your borders open, that we're going to see that as racism, when, this coronavirus is spreading all across the world.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. And they sent all these people over to places like Italy, and where they were selling all their cloth and that type of thing, and kept that open, didn't they?
Of course. And while at the same time they're doing this, while they're spreading it to the rest of the world, the CCP, it got its little CCP loyalists all across the world to buy up all the masks, buy up hand sanitizers, necessary health equipment.
I didn't know that. They were buying it up, huh? They were buying it up themselves.
Exactly, and now they're trying to sell it to the world at a highly inflated price.
Wow. Well, there's a number of things that they said. Create a virus and the antidote, spread the virus, demonstrate how efficient you are at building hospitals because you knew you were going to release this, cause chaos in the world, starting with Europe, quickly destroy the economy of other countries, stop production lines in other countries, cause the stock markets to fall and buy companies at a bargain price, control the epidemic in your country. After all, you already started it. You know how to control it. Lower the price of commodities so you can buy and sell oil and things like that you need on a large scale, and then produce everything quickly when everybody else is shut down. Does that sound logical? Would they do something that nefarious?
I mean, if you look at the 2017 People's Liberation Army's textbook on biological warfare,
right?
It has this situation. It has a little paragraph where it says China now has the capabilities to build, biological weapons, and should develop ethnic-specific genetic attacks against China's enemies. The fact that they have that, the fact that the virus erupted in Wuhan, where China's biowarfare lab is,
right,
and the things that happened afterward shows that this is intentional.
Well, you have a book written by Chinese Colonels Kuai Lang and Wang Chai-su, 1999, Unrestricted Warfare, Master Plan to Destroy America. You can get it on Amazon, and that tells you exactly what they did. I mean, they wrote about it in 1999.
They see the United States as their biggest threat to their rise. I mean, especially post-2013, the Chinese government has been very aggressive in terms of its rise through to achieve its One Belt, One Road Chinese dream, which is essentially gaining economic, political, and military dominance over the world.
We're talking with Prime Minister Salih Hudayar, Prime Minister in exile, of the Uyghur America. He's Uyghur American of the Uyghur peoples in China, and very, very. Now, how many Uyghurs are there in China right now?
So in East Turkistan, we estimate there's about 35 million Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples, of which about 30 million are Uyghurs.
That's a huge population. I didn't mean to say in China, in East Turkestan, because they are part and parcel of East Turkistan. It have been for 6,000 years. Please forgive me for saying in China. What can we do right now? What can we, the people here, do? One thing, you can go up to nationalawakening.org. Another is you can pay attention to what's going on in the news, and don't necessarily listen to the news, but listen to what's going on behind the news, because our news is not accurate. We know that.
Absolutely. One of the, other than that, every American, they should write to their members of Congress, especially their senators, to encourage them to pass the Uyghur Act of 2019 and to, recognize East Turkestan as an occupied country, to recognize China's atrocities in East Turkestan as a genocide.
Right.
And to really, offer diplomatic, political, and financial support to the East Turkestan cause.
And where possible, quit buying Chinese goods.
Absolutely. Boycott of Chinese goods at all levels, encouraging, American consumers to, buy at home, buy stuff made in America. Why are we, empowering China? Because with the money that we buy Chinese goods, they're just turning that into, aircraft carriers, anti-aircraft missiles,
submarines, everything,
killer missiles,
right,
and stuff like that, which will be used against America.
So are we going to make a change in China? Are they concerned about what the rest of the world thinks? I think they are. I think they're very concerned because from everything I've heard, when I talked with Dan Perkins first hour today, Dan was talking about how the debt of China is huge. And they're in serious trouble monetarily.
Absolutely. I mean, the Chinese government, right now they fear that the international community might, support East Turkestan, might support Tibet, might support Hong Kong, and that's exactly another reason why that they're forcibly transferring, Uyghurs out of East Turkestan and settling millions of Chinese settlers into East Turkestan. It's because they feel that something is going to happen and they're about to fall apart.
They want to dilute your population any way they can by having people marry outside of your population, by bringing other people in. They want to dilute your power, but it's not going to work.
I hope to God and I pray to God that it's not going to work. I mean they've been doing this for 70 years and they haven't succeeded.
They've been doing it for 70 years, but you've been around for 6,000 years. Look at that. Come on.
Exactly. So they won't succeed, especially, as the international community wakes up to the reality of China and begins to push back. I think that we will be saved.
And as more and more people hear about what's going on and hear about what is happening to the people there, then you absolutely are understanding that they know what's coming. So they can't do it by surprise right now. Too many people, and they've also they are so arrogant they're writing about it in their own publications.
Absolutely. I mean, they're constantly spewing anti-American, anti-Western propaganda. And this is not something that's new. I mean, they've been doing this for decades, especially during the Cold War era.
They can't help themselves but to write about what they're going to do. And they do that. They write about it. That's what's so amazing. You've got Chinese generals who are writing, well, here's what we're going to do. This is what's going to work. So they write about it. Now, it's just arrogance to do that.
Well, I mean, I think by writing about it, they're trying to, encourage other policymakers in the government that their idea is the right idea, and that's the path that the government should follow, and that's exactly what's been happening.
Absolutely. Now, what do you see happening? You think that I know that we're going to wake up, and I know that we're looking at China differently than we ever have before. The coronavirus definitely came out of China. To call it the Chinese virus was not xenophobic. It is the Chinese virus, no question about it. They tried to blame America for it. No way.
I think as the international community wakes up to the reality I think there's going to be pushback. There's already starting to, pushback by the people. Now it's just the governments that need to act and work towards, supporting, the independence of East Turkestan, Tibet, Hong Kong, and, engaging in political and economic warfare as just exactly the way the Chinese are engaging in political and economic warfare against the West.
I know that's a difficult question as to how long, but do you foresee the day that you're going back to East Turkestan?
Absolutely. That's the day that's what keeps me alive.
Right.
And going every day. I'm hopeful that within the next decade, in the coming decade, I'll be back in East Turkestan and that we'll be an independent nation. I hope that it's much sooner than that. I know that if President Trump gets another reelected, I think that it might become a reality during his term.
Only thing you want to bring back, you want to end the genocide, you want to end the concentration camps, of course, but you want to bring back the women's rights, and you especially want to have independence for your people. They deserve independence. They are free and independent people, been there for 6,000 years, up until 1949, that they were independent. The bad part is, and the good part, is all the resources that you have there. So as an independent country with those resources, you could be one of the more prosperous places on the face of this earth. Exactly,
and I believe that we will be a very prosperous nation after we regain our independence. In terms of all the resources that we have, we need Western companies from the United States and others to help us develop our country. So I think it'll be a win-win situation for both the West and for us.
Have the people there disparaged, or are the people there hopeful? I think they've got to be hopeful, because you're the sense of you having the ability to speak out on programs like this and other places gives them hope that the world is going to listen.
Of course, our people have always been hopeful. We've never given up our struggle for independence, and I don't think that we will ever give up our struggle for independence until we, achieve independence. Our people are very hopeful, even inside East Turkestan and outside East Turkestan.
The biggest mistake they make is to try to destroy your belief in God. When they try to do that, then they're taking away your inner soul. They cannot have your soul. They might have your life, but they will not take your soul.